Hello and welcome to COS Indiana Live as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Indiana Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
Greetings, everyone. My name's Dale Parrish. I am normally the host for COS Indiana Live on a weekly basis. Of course, John Ackerman would normally be hosting the roundtable this evening. But as you know, this is a Memorial Day weekend holiday. So we have decided to give everybody the night off. And in place of a normal roundtable, then we're going to do a special pre-recorded Memorial Day presentation for you tonight. And what we're going to present to you is another episode of a series that one of our volunteers, Larry Hudson, one of our outstanding region captains, is doing on Meet the Founders. And we presented episode 1 of his series last week on our broadcast and in that episode he featured Colonel George Mason. Well, we're going to present to you tonight part 1 of episode 2 that he has presented or developed, and that is on Thomas Jefferson. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Larry's doing an outstanding job in creating this series. And we've got some other series in process too, and you'll be hearing us talking about those as time goes on. But tonight we're going to present to you as a special holiday pre-recorded program tonight. We're going to present to you part 1 of episode 2 on Thomas Jefferson. Now, Part 2 and Part 3 will be presented and in future broadcasts on COS Indiana Live. So yeah, there's a lot of information available on Thomas Jefferson. So Larry had to create a Part 2 and a Part 3. So we'll be presenting those on future broadcasts. So hope you enjoy this episode 2, Part 1. And once the video is completed, then I'll come back and we'll close out the evening broadcast and say goodnight to you. So hope you enjoy it. Well, greetings, everyone. This is Dale Parrish again, our virtual program coordinator for COS Indiana Live in Indiana. And I want to welcome you back to our Meet the Founders series with our speaker, Larry Hudson. Hello, Larry.
Hi, Dale. How are you?
Good. Glad to see you. So Larry this is a new series that we've created specifically for our subscribers to COS Indiana Live. And this will be episode number 2. And this will be about one of our founders, Thomas Jefferson, one of our very, very famous founders, well-known, well written about. And so much so that I think we're going to call this part 1, right, Larry? I
hope so. Yes.
I hope so.
There's a lot written about him. I haven't read it all, certainly.
He's definitely one of the better known founders, as opposed to episode 1, which was about George Mason. The amount written by Thomas Jefferson exceeds quite a bit the amount written about George Mason. But anyway, so I've noted a few questions as we go along here. And Larry, I'll be asking you as we go along here, and hopefully we can make this somewhat interesting for our viewers and listeners. So you want to get us started off, Larry?
I do. I hope so. Let me start, I think, Dale, with a quote that I read somewhere along the line that JFK made. He made it back in the early 60s, I think. He was welcoming a group of Nobel Prize winners to a dinner in their honor at the White House. And he's quoted as saying, and I'm going to read it here, quote, "I think this is the most extraordinary collection of talent, of human knowledge that has ever been gathered together here at the White House, with the possible exception of when Thomas Jefferson dined here alone." I thought that pretty much summed up
That's good. That's good.
what a lot of people think about Thomas Jefferson. But okay, let's go on to some background information.
Yeah.
On his more public life and his many accomplishments, actually. As we all know, he was a primary author of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, our nation's first Secretary of State under President George Washington, our nation's second Vice President under John Adams, and then in 1801, he became our nation's third president. And I would add that he was a leading proponent of representative democracy, kind of a new term. Again, republicanism with a small r. And
that's where the small r originated.
Right, the small r. And I'm going to take just a minute here to read something. This is from, that kind of give you an idea of what they meant by republicanism in that time. This is from Article 4, Section 4 of our own Constitution. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. That's in our Constitution. Well, what is a Republican form of government? Small r. And this is where a state is ruled by representatives of a citizen body or its people. We call it a republic. They called it then a republic. And that's founded on the idea that sovereignty rests with the people through their elected representatives, and where the head of state is not a hereditary monarch. It's sometimes called a representative democracy as opposed to a direct democracy, which everybody at that point in time, I would hope at this point in time, would not be willing to live under a direct democracy.
Yeah, but that definition is really misconstrued many times, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
The Republican Party gets the name from it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Republican Party is in line with that definition in every aspect.
Okay.
But he went on. He was also a firm proponent of individual rights, God-given as he saw them. And he produced many formative documents and historic decisions, actually, at the state, national, and even at the international level back in that day. He was also an inventor, a lawyer, an architect, and an educator.
My goodness.
Yeah, he graduated from the University of William and Mary at the age of 18, just 2 years after he enrolled in the university.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. And in addition to designing his home, we all know as Monticello, he also designed the Virginia State Capitol, as well as the rotunda in the University of Virginia, which he also founded. He and James Madison actually started the first official political party in the United States, the Democratic Republican Party, I should say, in our country. And he orchestrated the Lewis and Clark expedition, and he was responsible, of course, for the Louisiana Purchase. So I think most presidential scholars and historians generally praise his many public achievements, and he's consistently ranked among the top 10 U.S. presidents to date.
Yeah.
There are some, Dale, of more recent critics who have leveled several accusations of wrongdoing on his part, and I know that they would perhaps dispute ranking.
Yes, and I've heard a claim, and I want to bounce this off of you, but I've heard a claim that he fathered a number of children with one of his slaves, and that in fact there's DNA evidence to prove that. Is that a true accusation?
Well, first off, these accusations really range from him having, as you mentioned, an extended affair with a young slave girl that produced a number of children, to charges that he was a racist who opposed equality for Black Americans, and even accusations by some who want to insist that he was a secularist who denied the Bible, wrote his own instead, or even that he was an atheist and wanted a total separation of church and state. These are just a few. There are others, and I will address these and the others, for that matter, later on in this account of his life. But for now, I'm just going to say that to answer your question, the answer is elusive and debatable.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Well, I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but tell us a bit more about his early life, his education and family, and we know he lived at. Is it Monticello or Monticello?
Well, from what I understand, we pronounce it Monticello. That's the county seat where I grew up. But Monticello is evidently how they pronounce it, or maybe the Italians pronounce it. I'm not sure, because it comes from an Italian, if I recall correctly. It's Italian for little mountain.
Okay. Well, I as a child, my parents were from the Kentucky, Tennessee area, and I remember on one of our vacations we went to I'm going to say Monticello.
Yeah,
and took a tour of it. Yeah, it's quite a beautiful place. Beautiful place. Well, and your Kennedy quote indicated that he obviously was very intelligent, well-read. Is that all pretty well documented?
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed. I'll start.
What about his family? Yeah, tell us more about his family.
Yeah, I'll start there. He was born in 1743. I know that for a fact because that was just 200 years before I was born.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. He was born in 1743 up near the Blue Ridge Mountains in what's now Western Virginia, just east of, I believe it's modern day Charlottesville.
Oh, okay.
And he was born at Shadwell, which is on the Rivanna River, one of the tributaries of the James River. And the Rivanna was made more navigable, partially by the efforts of his father, a Peter Jefferson, who owned much of the land along its upper course, including this Shadwell. And he had built a small mill complex on the river, and it overlooked this lofty hill known as Monticello. And Thomas was one of 10 children, 8 of whom survived to adulthood. His mother was from the prominent Randolph family, and his father, Peter, who I mentioned, was a member of the House of Burgesses. Now, that particular term, the House of Burgesses, that was the representative assembly in colonial Virginia, which becomes an outgrowth of the first elective governing body in the American colonies. And it eventually, of course, became the General Assembly of Virginia. His father was also a surveyor, a justice of the peace, I think, a lieutenant colonel in the militia. And unfortunately, he died suddenly when Thomas was but 14 years old. He drowned, as a matter of fact, in a boating accident.
Oh.
But fortunately, he was well off enough to provide money for Thomas's for Thomas to further educate himself, as he found himself the head of the family at the age of 16 or 14. I'm sorry, 14.
14. Yeah. Well, you've touched on how talented and smart he was. I understand that he was even well versed in other languages besides English. You want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, it was on both accounts, actually. At age 16, he entered the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And it was here that he met a law professor by the name of George Wythe. That's W-Y-T-H-E.
Okay.
And he became his most influential mentor. Wythe, by the way, also signed the Declaration of Independence. And he was a Virginia delegate to the Philadelphia Convention in 1787. But for 2 years, he studied under Wythe. He studied the various classical languages. He studied mathematics, metaphysics, I guess. I'm not sure what that is. Rhetoric, classical literature, philosophy, and as well as the writings of John Locke, Adam Smith, the economic guru, Isaac Newton, Montesquieu. He also dug into Latin, French, Greek. He studied the violin as well.
My goodness.
He carefully studied both the old. This was news to me. He carefully studied both the Old and the New Testament of the Bible.
Yeah.
And he was said to have an amazing aptitude for languages. You mentioned this. So that by the time he graduated, he could read Latin, Greek, Spanish, Italian, and Anglo-Saxon, which I found strange. I looked that up. The Anglo-Saxon language was a language that was called Old English, spoken by the Anglo-Saxon people. And it's an ancestral form of modern English, the language they use today, although it's a wholly separate language with a completely separate form of vocabulary within itself. The English was apparently a dialect of the language spoken by the West Germanic tribes and the Teutonic tribes that participated in the invasion of England during medieval times. So he took the time to study that language, and in so doing, he was surprised to learn, I read, that Anglo-Saxons practiced a form of what he called the ancient principles that the Israelites followed while under Moses in the Old Testament. And I'll have a little bit more to say on this somewhat later. But he was also fluent in French, could speak it fluently, and then he was admitted to the Virginia bar at the young age of 23.
My goodness.
Yeah, he was quite an intelligent gent.
I'll tell you, I didn't realize this information about him. This has been being very informative, Larry. I'll tell you. Well, Larry, we mentioned Monticello, however you want to pronounce it, and we know that became his home, right? So, yes. Tell us a bit about his home, about the estate, about his life at that point in time at Monticello.
You bet. Well, when he was 25, he began constructing his primary residence, which is Monticello. And I think I mentioned earlier, it means little mountain in Italian. And it was overlooking a hilltop where his father had set up that mill. And it encompassed, at the time he got it, 7,200 acres of land and 60 slaves. And they were all part of his inheritance that came when his father drowned. And as a matter of fact, he spent actually most of his adult life designing, redesigning Monticello as its chief architect. Construction was apparently done locally by masons and carpenters. And as I said, he had at that point in time roughly 60 slaves, and they were involved in the construction efforts as well. Then after practicing, I think he was a circuit lawyer for several years. And then later, I believe somewhere around the age of 29, he married a 23-year-old widow by the name of Martha Wales Skelton was her name. And she was also, incidentally, his third cousin.
Is that right? Okay.
I don't know how that works, but that's okay.
Okay.
He acquired a number of slaves as a part of her dowry, and then even more later from the estate of her very wealthy father at his death, which made him, at that time, the second largest slave owner in the county. He had a total of about 187 slaves.
Wow.
And they gained an additional 11,000 acres of land from her father's estate.
I guess back then, a wealthy person's inheritance could include slaves. That was part of their property, I guess, huh?
Well, as I understand in the reading I've done, all of our founders inherited slaves. They all came through inheritance, and they're rich, if you will, or more well-to-do fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers really amassed the number of slaves and just passed them on. And so they inherited them and then were stuck with them in a sense, as we'll find out here a little later.
Okay. Well, welcome back. And I hope you enjoyed that episode 2 series, part 1 of Thomas Jefferson with Larry Hudson presenting. So like I said, Larry has just been doing an outstanding job on this series. So look forward to presenting more of the series to you, and I hope you'll enjoy those as well. Well, let's look at what's coming up next week. Next broadcast will be, our next regular broadcast will be June 3rd, and we're going to present a book review. Our outstanding volunteer, Gary Harbaugh, is going to interview the author of this book, and the book is entitled The Devil and the Black Box. And the author is one of our comms team members here in Indiana, Charlie Myers. You probably have seen him. He once in a while he participates as a panel member on our roundtable. But Charlie does a great job for us. And in his daily living, one of the things that he has gotten involved in is writing books. So this is a book that he has written, and we're going to interview him and learn more about the book that he has created, The Devil and the Black Box. So hope you'll want to look forward to tune into that. Beyond that, then our next roundtable will be in June, on June 24th. Now that's a significant date for us. That is going to be a special celebration for us. We're going to celebrate our 250th broadcast. So yes, we've been doing this for a few years, and we're now going to be close to achieving that 250th broadcast mark. And we're in the process of trying to arrange our special guest, CEO of Convention of States, Mark Meckler. Haven't got this firmed up yet, but I think we're trying awful hard to get this done. So if it doesn't work out, we'll do something else. But that is what we have planned for our next roundtable, which will be on June 24th. next month. So you want to be sure and tune in to that and help us celebrate that 250th mark on our 250th broadcast. So with that said, I am going to sign off this evening. I hope you all have had a great Memorial Day weekend, and I hope you have enjoyed this pre-recorded presentation to you this evening. And keep in mind now, we will be back with you again on June 3rd. So we want to sign off now and enjoy your evening and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much for joining us.
I struggle to empathize with people who would give up. It doesn't make sense to me. Sam Adams said, for those of you who prefer safety and security over liberty, over the animating fight for liberty, I hope that you enjoy licking the hands that feed you. May your chains rest lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen. Like, do you understand that your kids and you are sentencing your kids and your grandkids and your friends' kids and your neighbors' kids to a lifetime of slavery and servitude, literally, of fear, of living in the darkness, but never, ever, never, never, never give up. George Washington lost the majority of his battles that he fought in the American Revolution. If you read his writings, if you read the letters where he was writing to Congress asking for money and troops, he was saying, we're losing. I don't have the troops I need. I don't have the supplies I need. Did he quit? What about the guys on the beach at Normandy? Like, what did they do? Did they just quit? Oh, there's, a lot of guys are dying around me. It's really bad. It looks really dismal. Those cliffs are huge. Machine gun fire raining down on us. And it's too hard. We should just quit. Thank God those people didn't quit. If they had, where would we be? I get discouraged for sure. And I will quit fighting at some point. And that point is when the first shovel of dirt hits the top of my box 6 feet down.